By the time I finish editing this podcast, it's just going to be one word.
And now.
And it's going to be that word, you saying end. Let's do this. Okay.
Let's do this thing. Welcome to Brotherhood, a spoiler-filled podcast where we review each episode of the deliciously nightmare-inducing TV show Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. My name is Timothy MacArthur, the taller brother.
And my name is Dylan MacArthur, the older brother.
Today's episode, The Fifth Laboratory.
On the 5th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me
nothing.
She implanted the memory of Christmas when she bonded my soul to this podcast.
Wah, wah, wah.
Okay, so normally, I like to make lots of notes when I am preparing and watching the show, but it sucked me in so much that by the time the episode was over, I looked down and I realized that I had written nothing.
That's kind of funny, actually.
I do have a few notes, which I managed to scribble down after the episode was over, but my goodness.
It was a good episode.
I guess there's only one way that we're going to be able to do this, and that's to, try to actually do a linear review of this thing. So,
Yep.
We start off, our characters are entering the 5th laboratory. It's one of those nice little transitions where it goes from what we saw last week to what's happening this week.
And you get to see, do they start fighting it, or are they just...
Right after the flashback is over, we jump right into the fighting. We have Barry versus Alphonse and Edward versus Slicer, or Slicers, plural, as we discover later.
Yep. Slicer the homicide, or Slicers the homicide.
I don't really know what to say about this fight, other than I was sucked in.
Yeah, it was a really good fight.
It's not a particularly acrobatic fight from either of them, although Barry is pretty impressive with when he throws the knife and it lands straight in the guard, which was, hated that. But
yeah, it was gross. But I think, personally, the more disturbing part was more towards the end, but we'll get to that after this. It's more about the characters, really.
There are two things that I'm thinking of as I'm talking about this. One of them is Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'll explain why in a second. But the other one is Princess Bride, the fight between Inigo Montoya and Wesley, in which you have a similar thing where the entire fight is pointed by an overlapping dialogue between these two characters. This is a classic editing technique where you have two storylines that, in order to maximize the effect of both, you play them at the same time so that they climax together, so that the fight is highlighted and contrapointed by the drama between the two characters as they're talking to each other.
Although my favorite part is that you kind of see a contrast between the two opponents. Like Barry, you can definitely tell, has less of an honor code compared to Slicer.
There's a famous short story of the gentleman who lives alone on an island because he enjoys hunting. The Most Dangerous Game is the name of the short story. And he sort of reminds me of that kind of character where he has that honor code, but he's also very, very polite, but also he just loves killing people.
Other thing is that I hate how can't say much about the Slicer who isn't the helmet, because all we hear is the one that's in the helmet, but for the most part, we don't get to hear his brother.
I think he gets 3 lines in this entire episode.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting contrast to the original series where that entire thing right there, where they're separated into brothers, was an entire episode.
Yeah.
The other thing that this reminds me of is Yu-Gi-Oh! And the reason it reminds me of that is because Yu-Gi-Oh! Follows this very weird pattern where you have these fights, which are visual, but they're completely over-shouted by the talking.
Yeah. This is why we now know that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is nothing but a contest of who can shout the loudest.
The little carrot that they're dangling in front of us for this entire episode is what's going on in this laboratory. Because, and this is this sort of harkens back to bosses in video games, especially in Legend of Zelda, where you have the boss who comes in purely to prevent you from moving any further. And so this whole time you're just when is Edward going to defeat the boss so that he can move further down into the fifth laboratory, and so we can discover what's really going on here.
But then you get this twist where instead of him being able to go into the laboratory further, he is stopped and the laboratory is burned to the ground by Stretchy Claws and the shapeshifter.
We need to come up with a little pet name for Envy as well. Is Envy a guy?
I think it's a he.
Okay.
It's a he.
The reason I ask is because I've been assuming that Envy has been a girl because Envy wears a midriff, and a midriff is kind of pointless on a dude.
Well, I think Envy is mostly called a dude in this show for some reason.
And that was the thing that confused me, is that Team Rocket refers to Envy as a he.
I don't know if it matters too much because, well, no, this could be a spoiler. Never mind.
Yeah, let's avoid those spoilers. But this immediately beggars a question, which is, what is the connection between our unholy trio and the government? Because this was supposed to be something that was being performed by the government, and instead of seeing them, we're seeing these other people who seem to be at odds with Central.
No comment. I mean, I think it's obvious at this point, which is also why I'm going to offer no comment.
Dang it. Now that's going to kill me because I've been doing so good with figuring out what little hints
it's
they were
not
dropping.
too obvious, but it's not obvious. You can tell that the two are connected, but that is it.
Also, Dylan's theorizing corner. I think it's interesting that both Stretchy Claus and Jack Jack have markings on them that are very reminiscent of transmutation circles, and also the seals that we have seen on the suits of armor thus far in this story. There's a part of me that wonders if there was a failed attempt at bonding going on here. Like, there's a part of me that highly suspects that gluttony is going to be a reinterpretation of the Jewish idea of a golem, which is this idea of a creature that is made out of clay and then brought to life.
Interesting theory. Still no comment.
Oh my gosh.
Because if I were to comment, you'd want to kill me, and I'd probably be destroying myself by making a comment.
That kind of takes us towards the end of the episode, so let's fill in with the notes that I do have.
Okay.
We see Kimberly again. It's been a while since we've been reminded that this character exists at all, but he comes back in what looks like a slightly different prison, but I don't know if that was intentional or not.
And apparently he's having a high or something based off of the fact that there's a building completely crumbling and being burnt to the ground right next to the prison he's in, which is really weird.
I have a note right here, which is that he has these circles on his hands, so it's pretty clear that that's how he does his alchemy stuff. Don't you think that his hands are pretty dangerously close together in those shackles? Like, could they have maybe gotten something, I don't know, a little
more
bigger?
restrictive? Yeah. Like, one of those things that they put you in before they throw fruit at you?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
that's what I was thinking. Why didn't they do that? You'll realize later.
Oh my gosh. What's probably going to end up happening is that all of these theories that I am formulating aren't going to be answered until like the last 6 episodes of the season, which will mean that I won't know any of this until August. Also, during this time, we've got that choral cue that I complained about. Unlike the last time that I mentioned this, where I said that it didn't match the drama, I think it definitely matched the drama here. And I think the reason why is because we're at the climax. This is the point where we have, I think, as I was counting, it was 4 separate intercutting storylines. But again, this is a classic editing technique where you have multiple storylines, all of which need to be given to the audience. You've got the arc with Alphonse, who's having these seeds of doubt planted into his mind that maybe he isn't a real boy after all.
Which, now that I think about it, makes me imagine Alphonse going, "I've got no strings to hold me down."
There are no strings on me. You have Edward and his storyline with his arm, which has been completely broken. You've got the storyline with the 5th laboratory, which we have known nothing about and is blowing up before us. Like, how is that going to finish out? We've got the one with Kimberly. We've also got this...
Kimberly. It's Kimberly, not Kimberly.
Kim Possible. So we've got this, and we've also got this storyline with... We've also got this storyline that's going on with Mustang and Colonel Hughes, their little discussion. We have all of these different storylines that are layering on top of each other and building up at the same time. And it's very dramatic. This is a point when it would be perfect to use that choral cue. And it's a great cue, by the way.
Yep.
I have no problem with the music itself. I actually
The
love
music itself is pretty good.
I mean, it's great.
Yep. It's good music. It's awesome.
It just needs to be used at the right time. A couple of the notes that I have about this. I was paying close attention to Barry the Chopper's eyebrows during this episode.
I think the thing they did is that they didn't exactly move the eyebrows. They made them look like they moved through the use of very clever shadowing.
And the thing about the human brow line is that it is very weirdly shaped. You really can go to town just by changing the angle. Next note that I have, Barry the Chopper's backstory. That drawing style, that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, but I think it works with the way he was telling the story, actually. Because at first he made it kind of sound like he was telling a story that would have been fit for children. But then all of a sudden it goes dark, just like any other episode of A Fullmetal Alchemist.
But even when it does go dark, the drawing style still remains largely the same. You have these really soft, rounded shapes, very, very simplified color palette. The note that I have here is that it's a soft drawing style that softens the horror of the story.
It makes it look like a parody of a kid's book or something.
This is a backstory that could easily be just as disgusting as watching a knife fly straight into somebody's face.
But personally, the most disturbing part to me is when Envy pops in and he just starts stabbing the seal until Slicer just dies. Because, the knife to the face, it's disgusting, but it's done when it's done. Whereas the stabbing, it's far slower and, you actually feel more for that character because you can see them writhing in agony.
I'm actually going to disagree with you on that one because it's abstracted. There's no direct natural connection between tapping a seal and suddenly the character being no more. Like that's not something that happens in real life. It abstracts it a little bit so that you can still be engaged in the drama of it.
I guess I feel a lot easier than you do is the problem.
Well, it's not that one of us feels them more, it's that there are certain things that we respond to more than the other person.
Yep. But,
One more observation that I have about this episode is in regards to Barry's eyes, which we talked about in the last episode, them being little pinpoints. His pupils are really expressive.
Yeah, they are. They enlarge sometimes to some extent, but they also...
I mean, they change in size, they change in shape. A lot of his emotion is being conveyed through the pupils, which is in direct contrast to the other, I guess, three bonded characters that we have in this show, being Alphonse and the two Slicer brothers, who their eyes don't change at all.
Yeah. Barry the Chopper is a pretty cool masterpiece of animation and all that. If there was an award for best thing in anime, I think Barry the Chopper might get it.
I mean, we devoted an entire special to him.
Yes, indeed. This might as well be called the Barry the Chopper special.
Are we going to be seeing more of this character? Because he runs off.
Yeah, we are going to see more of him. I'm not going to tell you when or where or why or how, but we're going to see more of him. That's
Okay.
about it.
All right. And my last question is, are Alphonse and Edward going to separate? By their choice.
Not in Brotherhood.
Okay. Because I know that they do separate in the original series, and you weren't particularly fond of that, and I'm not sure that would be a good decision here either. Simply because their characters rely on each other to be interesting.
Yeah, if they separated in this one, it would be a greater tragedy than I think in the original.
Without the humanizing effect of Alphonse and Edward and the kind of madness that Edward forces upon Alphonse, I think that they would drift into places that wouldn't be as engaging of drama.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they're going to be sticking together.
I'm glad of that too. So should we end the episode now, or is there more we want to talk about?
Are you fine with the Tuesday, Thursday release dates?
I think so. As long as we every so often take breaks.
All right. Well,
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Timothy.
Goodbye.